Hey, how's it going, everybody? Charlie Wilson here, aka Sinister Charlie. Welcome back. Hi, how's it going? I hope your day's going well. Yeah, I missed this Gigguk video. I usually do Gigguk videos from time to time. Yeah, you think I would have gotten to this one, considering I'm not a huge fan of I don't know why closed captioning's on. Uh, I'm not a huge fan of Isekai. I think it's played out. I mean, it'd be cool if there was like a couple good ones every so often, and that was it. But it seems like there's a Isekai everywhere ever since, like, I guess, I don't know, probably Sword Art Online. I think that's probably what set it off really to being really popular. Anyway, you can. I'll stop talking. We'll watch video. We'll watch video, and go.
Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about the newest, hottest anime to come out this season, alright? Get this. It's about a completely normal shut-in otaku with a very specific skill set that makes him useless in the real world.
Shut up.
He's suddenly transported to a fantasy world, kind of similar to any JRPG.
Can't be talking about me.
Where he suddenly becomes the hottest shit, and he has two jobs: messing up any poor soul who looks at him the wrong way and getting some 2D bitches.
That's right.
Wait, doesn't this sound oddly familiar? Well, if you're a fan of anime, or at least aware of modern anime, it should, as what I just described is a basic premise for a show in the genre of Isekai, which roughly translates to another world. In recent times, it's been pretty hard to escape shows in the Isekai genre, to the point where every season they're always...
Hold on a second, I gotta check when this was, damn, 6 years ago, I missed it, okay.
seems to be one or two new
Get
additions
ready
with
for more.
variations to the premise. Another world, but with a smartphone. Another world, but with a world of games. Another world, but with a group of dickheads. If you've been following anime for the past few years, you can't have missed it, and it's taken up some spots for some of the most popular anime to come out each year. But how did this come to be? How did such a seemingly niche idea end up rising to become almost as prominent in anime as High School, Mecha, or Slice of Life? And is there anywhere left for the genre to go? Well, today I thought it'd be interesting to explore the roots of the genre, why it's gripped modern audiences so much, and the evolution it's taken to get to where we are now. See, when we think of modern isekai, we have a general idea of the tropes and cliches of the plot and world.
I think probably it got so popular because of the gaming industry, I would assume.
That we normally see. But the concept of a main character being transported to another world is by no means new or even exclusive to the world of anime. And if we are going to explore the roots of the genre, we have to travel back a pretty long time.
Probably Alice in Wonderland, I guess. That there you go. Hey, I called it.
If we were to go back to the first piece of prominent fiction to really nail down a character being transported to another world, it would be hard to argue against Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland from way back in 1865. One of the most iconic stories ever told that's been referenced and adapted countless times in just about every medium imaginable could very well be considered the progenitor of Isekai. It went on to directly influence other hugely impactful works of its kind, like The Wizard of Oz and The Chronicles of Narnia, all which laid the groundwork for what is now common practice.
Yeah, you always forget about Narnia.
With such classic stories influencing global media, it would only be natural for the concept to hit anime. And while Alice in Wonderland itself did in fact get an anime adaptation from March of 1983, a mere month before that saw the first episode air of something a bit closer to the tones and themes of the isekai shows of today. Aura Battle of Dunbean, produced by Studio Sunrise, was one of their recent follow-up works to Mobile Suit Gundam. It saw a young male protagonist from Tokyo get transported to a fantasy world resembling medieval England full of giant robots and mythical creatures, which definitely sounds like isekai. Now, I'm guessing that very few of you would have even heard of Dunbean. I mean, I certainly didn't until I did research for this video, with its direct influence and legacy being fairly non-existent, as the modern consensus of fantasy world in anime would really start a little later, in the decade of the 90s.
The 90s. I gotta be honest, I was not a big Friends guy. I was more of a Seinfeld guy. I don't know if you guys can hear, there's a train going by. Happens every time I want to record something.
were our female protagonists and traditional fantasy worlds. Dot Hack and the Greed Island arc of Hunter x Hunter's original adaptation introduced the idea of having your conscience trapped in a virtual world. And Zero no Tsukaima in 2006 saw harem elements added, and most importantly came in a time when the idea of light novel adaptations.
I used to listen to the crap out of that out of that Daft Punk album. Yeah, I used to watch those music videos like crazy too.
We're just starting. Combine all these aspects and you have the building blocks for the show that marked the explosion of the modern Isekai. I know we're all sick and tired of hearing about Sword Art Online by now, but it's impossible to discuss this genre without mentioning the massive impact this show had. I've already talked in depth about how Sword Art Online got popular and how it filled in a niche of popular anime targeted towards gamers in a time when there wasn't much competition. And through its success, it marks the point where the genre we know today as Isekai really found its footing. If we compare SAO to the previously mentioned shows in the 90s, you can see a massive shift in the way
I think I tried to watch SAO once, and it just wasn't for me. Or maybe that was Dot Hack sign. I can't say words. Yeah, Dot Hack was really big back in the early 2000s. Or not big, but it was on Toonami, and that's all we had. Back in the day, we couldn't just buy anime or watch it online, you know.
Concept is approached. This time,
you had to pay $40 for a DVD.
One who was way more powerful than everyone around him, with an entourage of love interests. And rather than be set in a traditional fantasy world, the setting was more akin to an RPG fantasy world. And this, I think, is the most noticeable change. It makes sense for SAO as all the members are stuck in a video game, but it seems like the world that characters are transported to nowadays have more of a grounding in classic fantasy JRPGs like Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger, with the same tropes that would envelop such a world. What the show did was make these elements marketable, and while some still argue that Sword Art Online isn't technically an isekai as their real bodies didn't get transported anywhere, it didn't matter as it left its mark. The groundwork was set for the rise of a new trend, and shows would pull more from aspects in SAO than anything that came before. For better or worse, the new isekai was here to stay.
Man, a lot of questionably copywritten music in this video. You know this is an old Gigguk video.
Just what is it that makes isekai such an appealing genre? You can take a look at some of the more prominent ones and say, well, isn't it just escapism, a self-insert,
yeah,
or
I guess
just
so.
a power fantasy?
Yeah.
And in this broad sense, it's hard to argue against it. One of the best things the Isekai platform allows for is having far more relatable main characters than traditional fantasy, on a surface level at least. Having someone from our world coming to terms with and learning the ways of this new world allows the audience to share their experience of learning about said world from the ground up. There's generally very little need for wordy exposition early because the way the story plays out tends to favor gradual progression and development in world building. It's this reliance on making the protagonist relatable that has many of these characters start out as gamers or anime fans in their own world. If there is a definitive platform that thrives on self-insert characters, it is Isekai, and in many ways turns the genre into one of the truest forms of escapism.
I really want to be a cat girl. Sorry.
It is Isekai. And
yeah, that's me. You bet you're wondering how I got here.
Always turns the genre into one of the truest forms of escapism, at least as long as you are a part of that wide target audience, whether you are a gamer, or a gamer. Wait a minute. I think we might be onto something here. While Isekai technically means another world, which could be any type of world, modern Isekai has almost become synonymous with an RPG world. Knights, mages, spells, NPCs, a power system based on RPG-like stats. Whether the story is something more akin to an actual gaming world like in Log Horizon, or a much more brutal and unforgiving take at the genre like in Grimgar, Fantasy, and Ash. It's to the point now where I completely forgot that
that's how you know
done much.
I haven't seen I've seen enough Isekai, but lately I'm just kind of burnt out on the genre. I mean, Goblin Slayer. I don't know if Goblin Slayer doesn't really count, but that's like the most fantasy thing I've watched recently, and I haven't even seen the second season yet.
She wasn't, in fact, an isekai show. There is no guy transported to another world. They are just in another world. But because of the tropes that are present in it and the RPG-like world that it's set in, I completely thought it was until rereading up on it.
Plots.
made me remember otherwise.
Sorry.
If we look at the most popular shows in the genre that came out after Sword Art Online, we see the different appeal that made them stand out and the evolution of how a different aspect of the genre was explored in order to do so. No Game No Life played on some of the same power fantasies as in SAO, but instead of showing that through action scenes or raw strength, it was through interesting contests and entertaining mind games. Konosuba took the standard setting and added in a memorable and colorful cast who bounced off each other well, bringing out the wacky humor that we loved, essentially making a sitcom in a setting we don't normally see as sitcom. And finally, ReZero took all the tropes we thought we were familiar with and tired of and subverted them, deconstructing the overpowered otaku protagonist that we were just watching a few seasons ago.
I hear it's pretty rough.
The one thing that remains constant is just that. The setting. Every one of these shows still has a grounding in an RPG fantasy world, even if the shows have nothing to do with video games itself. In some way, it's still appealing to the same demographic of gamers that allowed SAO to take over the community to begin with. The ones that grew up playing these types of games, and in some cases, the protagonists are as familiar with the genre of RPGs as the audience is. While the main appeal of the...
I need to play a Final Fantasy game. I think I need to play Final Fantasy X again. Usually I play that like every year. I probably should live stream that. Yeah, I gotta get back to that annoying voice acting.
Popular isekai titles at some level draw in that gamer crowd. With the sheer number of titles coming out now, we are starting to see stories that explore other aspects of isekai. And the reason this is possible is because these shows are normally based on light novels, and there are a lot of light novels to pick from, which in turn can cause a lot of these anime adaptations to suffer from a lot of the same problems light novel adaptations suffer from. One, of course, being incomplete adaptations. All the titles I mentioned still have ongoing light novels, which may or may not ever be adapted into an anime work. And with that said, I'm happy to announce our latest offer in collaboration with Bookwalker.
Hey, Bookwalker. I think he still has that as a sponsor.
Translated. As I'm sure you all know by now, Bookwalker are Kadokawa's official ebook service for light novels, including the likes of SAO, No Game No Life, Konosuba, Danmachi, and they are also doing a special giveaway to celebrate the release of Volume 5 of ReZero. If you buy any volume of ReZero, you have the chance of winning either a signed illustration by the author, this Rem figure, or a Rem and Ram desk trash bin.
Sometimes there's funny stuff in there.
Fucking trash bin, which I would love myself if they weren't giving it away. So unless you have already used it in the past, all you need to do is use coupon code Gigguk at checkout to buy any ebook for $5 off. See, in many ways, the isekai trend runs hand in hand with the rise of light novel adaptations as a whole. It's only been within the last decade that light novels have become such a common source of material for anime. But why is it that isekai in particular has such an abundance of light novels?
Very today. Very
Today, there are hundreds of different light novels from hundreds of different authors, and isekai holds a large portion of this. But where are they all coming from? What could cause the market to be dominated in such a fashion? Well, when looking into this further, I stumbled upon something quite interesting, and the pieces started to click. One of the biggest outlets for this is the site Shosetsuka ni Naro, which literally translates to becoming a novelist. This is a website that relies on user-generated content and is essentially the YouTube of light novels. Authors can independently publish their individual works on here, which are free to distribute and free to read by all individuals that use the site. Hosting hundreds of thousands of novels with a registered user base close to 1 million, its reach has not gone unnoticed by some of the biggest publishers and distributors in Japan. To put this in perspective, the likes of Log Horizon, ReZero, Konosuba, and Mahoka were first published on this platform. Hell, in the last season alone, 3 entirely different series got anime adaptations based on works from this website, all of which were isekai. Knights and Magic, Restaurant to Another World, and Another World with My Smartphone.
Never seen
any of them.
And you know
what? This makes perfect sense. What better source of stories that can appeal to the community of gamers and anime fans than the actual community itself? Of course, a genre that is so prevalent with self-insert protagonists and an understanding of exploring these stories through relatable eyes would come from user-generated content. The sheer quantity of isekai stories specifically that came from this platform is absurd to think about, but it truly goes to show that this genre at the moment is the bread and butter of the light novel industry. As far as large publishers for light novels are concerned though, it has even gotten to the point now where they are having to actively restrict how many new stories based around young male characters being trapped in the fantasy worlds are being created. Kodansha's entertainment novels that adults want to read contest, a light novel contest contest, which in
a very
itself
long
sounds
name for
as
a
stupidly
contest.
wordy as your typical light novel
Yeah,
title, had to set a rule where all stories that contained a teenage protagonist in any form of isekai were banned. So if even Kodansha themselves have had to put their foot down about the overabundance of isekai, it's clear that this concept has grown way beyond what anyone could have expected. With the sheer volume of new isekai stories coming out, it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. But we've gotten to the point now where the genre has become so saturated that just about every original twist on the premise seemingly has been done. To the point where we are starting.
Although I do want to see the this is an older video, but the vending machine anime where the guy gets turned into a vending machine. I think that's just that's hilarious. I want to see it.
To subvert the tropes that have been established with other works in its own genre. So where can we possibly go from here? Well, here's the interesting part. Out of all the tropes in the genre that have been picked apart, explored, expanded on, subverted, or even satirized, there is one part that has remained almost untouched.
Well, what that?
The fantasy part.
Okay. You don't need to get all like weird about
Pure
it.
fantasy without any RPG elements or transported to another world is something that audiences won't be completely tired of. And this is something that we've actually seen in recent seasons.
Yeah, I saw the first season of damn it. Now I forget the name. You'll say it.
Made in Abyss felt
there
like
you go,
such
Made
a
in Abyss.
monumental
You
breath of
did
fresh
say
air
it.
last season was because here was
Yeah,
a
I saw the
pure
first season.
fantasy
A
without any
couple
of the
episodes into the
traditional
second.
isekai storytelling
And,
mechanics that have taken
it's
over
rough.
recent
It's
fantasy
rough to get
animes
through.
within the past few years. And the show itself ended up being a prominent contender for Anime of the Year. Seriously, if you didn't finish this show last season, it is absolutely amazing.
It's
And it's one
rough.
of the best examples anime has to offer of a captivating and wonderful story remaining completely true to the core ideals of a fantasy fiction. And if you should watch one show this year that's not My Hero Academia, it's this one. But it doesn't stop there either, as some of the most high-profile anime coming out this year have their roots in traditional fantasy again, rather than the world of modern isekai fantasy. Little Witch Academia was one of the most hyped
I haven't
shows
seen it.
earlier this winter, which probably would have gained more traction within the community if Netflix had made it widely available as it was airing.
Yeah,
And this season, The
Netflix.
Ancient Magus Bride is gaining a lot of
Haven't seen it.
attention and
There's a lot of
traction for
stuff
the
I
way it's
haven't seen.
presenting its fantastical world within modern
Here it's
England.
good.
We may end up going full circle back to the genre's roots in traditional fantasy, and I find that hilariously ironic, as it was because of the isekai genre itself that traditional fantasy started to die out in anime. Whatever the future for this genre, whether hundreds more isekai stories get pumped out or it gets swallowed up by fantasy again, or if both die out, we shouldn't forget that trends come and go all the time.
Oh,
At
the
end of
isekai
day, getting
trend's
transported
probably
to another
around
world is
for a
just
while.
a premise that got immensely popular. But stories don't have to be completely original to be good. You can take all the tropes that have been established and refine them, or put a creative new spin on it, which admittedly is harder and harder to do with just how saturated isekai has become, but it's not impossible.
can't do the
We
CG.
thought we were completely tired of it at the beginning of last year. Then Konosuba made us realize that we weren't. We thought there was nowhere left for the genre to go. Then ReZero came along. And though it is much harder now to leave an impression on me with this premise, if there is a new story that comes out that is just well written or entertaining that also happens to be an isekai, I will still gladly welcome it with open arms.
Word up. Oh, and the music is great for that show. Really good music.
Again, I would like to thank Bookwalker for inspiring this video. You can
Okay.
check out all their selection of
All right, you saw the thing. Yeah, man. Dude, Made in Abyss, that is a hard watch. If you don't like seeing children get hurt, that is a rough one. Yeah, I think I started watching that when I did my Patreon thing, and I don't really do Patreon anymore. So, yeah, there you go. Good Gigguk video, man. I'm not a huge fan of the genre just because it's been oversaturated. I can't do it. But yeah, there you go. Gigguk video for you. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe down below. And comment if you have any suggestions, anything you want me to watch. I don't mind at all. You will not be bothering me. Just letting you know. All right. And I mean that. That's not sarcasm. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. And bye.